That's the story of Adar Poonawalla, and in many ways, that's what this pandemic is about. A string of stories of regimes covering up the Wuhan virus, stories of world agencies playing along, stories of shortages, hardships, death. You know these stories because of us. And by us, I mean the news media. So let me say this tonight. Journalists have been the invisible frontline workers of this pandemic. While you stayed home, reporters ventured out. First wave, second wave, it did not matter. The news always topped the agenda. Every day of the last year, our team has come to work, risking themselves and their families. What are we doing here? We are telling your stories. Well, turns out, people don't want them. They want rosier pictures, positive spins. WhatsApp forwards now say quarantine the media because they spread negativity. Well, here's a fact. The media did not create the pandemic. They only report it. And I don't speak for all media because I know there are those who exaggerate, and that's wrong. But for now, since everyone insists on positivity, let's talk about positivity. And let me tell you, this is complicated stuff. I'll try to simplify it. There is a direct link between the content you consume and your mental space. Think about it. You're generally happy after watching a funny movie. Not so much after a nail-biting thriller. The same applies for news. We end our show every day with a segment called Gravitas Images. What do you think that is? And why do we do this? To leave a light-hearted impression on you, the viewer. But can you apply this to wars and pandemics? There are people who say that relentless reporting on the second wave is spreading negativity. Are you one of those? Do you agree with this argument? And before you decide, look at some facts, not perspective, facts. More than 3,000 Indians are dying every day from the Wuhan virus. That is a fact. And it's a fact that Indians have a right to know. It reinforces how serious this pandemic is. Then you have information of all kinds. Is there a lockdown in your area? What are the best practices? What do you do if you contract the virus? These are all questions that the media has been trying to answer and should continue to answer. Of course, there are people who take it too far, people who try to spread fear, panic, misinformation. But here too, the media can play a positive role, should play a positive role, check facts, bust myths. And none of this can be a half-baked approach. We can't just report the good and ignore the bad. That's a choice that you as a viewer are empowered to make, not us. So not reporting the problem is not an option, not for us. We've said repeatedly that information is your biggest weapon. The more you know about the pandemic, the better equipped you are to face it. Today, the matter reached the Indian courts. Is the pandemic coverage too negative? You must know what the Supreme Court of India said. It said that the free flow of information must continue. The court was speaking on two issues. The first one relates to social media. You see, a lot of people have been sending SOS calls on the internet, mostly because they're desperate. But in some cases, such posts have been deleted. The Supreme Court is not impressed with this. It says a clampdown on information is plain wrong. And going forward, it would amount to contempt of court. The second instance was on reporting discussions inside courtrooms. You see, courts have been unsparing in their comments to the governments. A few days back, the Madras High Court came down heavily on the Election Commission of India, and you may have heard these remarks. We reported them too. The court said the Election Commission should be booked for murder for its negligence. So what did the Election Commission do? It went to the Supreme Court of India and it said that the media should be prevented from covering this bit of news. The top court has rejected this plea. It said that such reportage was in public interest, and we could not agree more. If you think watching negative news is taxing, think about the people covering it, let alone the people living it. It gives us no joy to tell you these stories of suffering, of people dying because they could not find an ICU bed. But that is India's reality, and reality is rarely pleasant. So what's the solution? What do you do if the pandemic coverage is genuinely affecting your mental space, and we understand that happens? You're always free to switch off. But remember this is not the same as ignorance. It's a choice that you're making. Do not consume the news, but don't pretend that the pandemic does not exist. So we will keep beaming the images to you of long lines outside hospitals, signboards that say no oxygen, people walking around without masks. These are supposed to be a constant reminder of how serious our problem is. A constant reminder to the governments that you need to act urgently. And ask yourself this: when millions of your countrymen are suffering, is positivity even possible? The news reflects the ground situation, and the ground situation, I'm afraid, is completely negative right now. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.